Captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the mining shuttle, watching the debris field drift past like metallic snow. 3 days into what should have been a routine asteroid survey, and they'd stumbled across something that made her stomach twist into knots. "Are you absolutely certain those are weapon signatures?" she asked her pilot, Marcus Webb, for the third time in 10 minutes. Marcus nodded grimly, his weathered hands steady on the controls. "Plasma burns, kinetic impact craters, and something that looks like it was hit with a gravitational disruptor. This wasn't pirates, Captain. This was military-grade hardware." The wreckage stretched for kilometers, twisted metal and crystalline fragments that had once been a ship unlike anything in human databases. The hull design was elegant, almost organic, with sweeping curves that suggested advanced engineering far beyond current human capabilities. Sarah had seen enough alien artifacts in the outer colonies to recognize superior technology when she saw it. There, Marcus pointed to a section of the wreckage that still maintained some structural integrity. "Life signs are faint, but they're there. Whatever's inside that section won't last much longer." Sarah made the decision that would change everything. "Take us in. Prepare the emergency airlock." The docking procedure was delicate work. The alien vessel's hull was composed of materials that their cutting tools barely scratched, but they found what appeared to be an emergency access port. When the seals engaged and atmosphere equalized, Sarah was surprised to find the air breathable, though it carried a strange metallic taste. The interior of the ship was a marvel of engineering. Walls curved seamlessly into floors and ceilings, and bioluminescent panels provided soft, pulsing light. Everything was sized for beings roughly human height, though the proportions felt slightly off in ways Sarah couldn't quite identify. They found the survivor in what appeared to be the command center, slumped over a control panel that still flickered with alien symbols. At first glance, Sarah thought they were looking at a human woman, but the similarities ended at basic body plan. Her skin had a pale blue tint that shifted to silver at the temples and fingertips. Her hair was white as starlight and seemed to move of its own accord, and when she stirred at their approach, her eyes opened to reveal irises of deep violet. "Marcus, get the medical kit," Sarah ordered, kneeling beside the alien. The woman was bleeding from several wounds, and her breathing was shallow. Despite the obvious physiological differences, Sarah's training kicked in. Bleeding was bleeding, and shock was shock, regardless of species. The alien's eyes focused on Sarah with surprising clarity. When she spoke, her voice was melodic, but carried undertones that seemed to resonate in Sarah's bones. The universal translator in Sarah's earpiece struggled for a moment, before producing a rough approximation. "You are, not Kethvar. Your species is unknown to me." "We're human," Sarah said, applying pressure to a wound on the alien's arm. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen. We found your ship's wreckage and detected life signs. We're here to help." The alien's expression shifted through what Sarah could only interpret as surprise, confusion, and then something that might have been hope. "Humans. I have heard whispers of your kind in the far reaches. You are the species that refuses to yield even when logic demands surrender." "That sounds about right," Marcus muttered, unpacking medical supplies. "Stubborn as mules, the lot of us." The alien attempted to sit up, wincing. "I am Zarthia of the Velteren. My ship was ambushed by Kethvar raiders while carrying vital intelligence to the Coalition worlds. The data must reach the border colonies before—" She collapsed back, her breathing becoming more labored. Sarah made quick decisions about alien anatomy and applied a stimulant from their emergency kit. It seemed to help, at least temporarily. "The Kethvar," Zarthia continued, "they have developed a weapon that can disrupt the neural pathways of most Coalition species. In 3 cycles, they will use it to attack the Proxima settlements. Thousands will die and the outer territories will fall." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. Proxima Centauri hosted 17 human colonies, nearly 2 million people. "How do you know about human settlements?" "The Coalition has been observing your expansion for decades. You intrigue us. Most species join the Coalition for protection, but humans—" She managed something that might have been a smile. "Humans expand into dangerous space with weapons that barely qualify as advanced and somehow survive encounters that destroy ships like mine." Marcus looked up from his medical scanner. "Her physiology is compatible with our emergency treatments, but she needs proper medical facilities. We need to get back to the station." Zarthia gripped Sarah's arm with surprising strength. "There is no time for medical facilities. The data must be transmitted immediately, and only I can authorize the quantum encryption keys. But my ship's communication array was destroyed in the attack. Our communication range isn't designed for interstellar transmission, Sarah said. We're just a mining operation. Then we must reach a coalition relay station. The nearest is in the Kepler system, but Zarthia's expression grew troubled. Human vessels are not recognized by coalition automated defenses. They will fire upon you before you can transmit the warning. Sarah felt the weight of an impossible situation settling on her shoulders. 2 million human lives hung in the balance, but any attempt to help would likely result in their destruction by the very people they were trying to warn. There is one possibility, Zarthia said quietly. Coalition law recognizes certain binding obligations that supersede defensive protocols. If you were to become the translation is imperfect. My life-bonded protector, your vessel would be granted safe passage. Marcus frowned. Life-bonded protector? That sounds like marriage. Not marriage, Zarthia corrected. Something far more binding. Among my people, when one saves another's life under specific circumstances, they become responsible for that person's continued existence. It is a sacred bond that carries significant obligations. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. What kind of obligations? Zarthia met her eyes directly. You would be required to ensure the continuation of my genetic line. When the time comes, you would provide the biological material necessary for me to bear offspring. The child would carry both our genetic markers and would be raised according to Veltaran tradition. The command center fell silent except for the soft humming of alien systems. Sarah stared at the wounded warrior, understanding that she was being asked to make a decision that would fundamentally alter the course of her life. And if I refuse? She asked quietly. Then I die here. The warning never reaches the colonies, and your people face extinction without ever knowing what destroyed them. Marcus whistled low. Captain, this is way above our pay grade. Sarah looked at the alien woman who held the fate of 2 million humans in her failing grasp. In Zarthia's violet eyes she saw desperation, honor, and something that might have been regret for the impossible choice she was presenting. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her like the gravity of a neutron star. When she opened them again, Zarthia was watching her with an expression that mixed hope and resignation in equal measure. Explain the process, Sarah said finally. I need to understand exactly what this bond entails. Zarthia struggled to sit up straighter, her pale blue skin growing more ashen with the effort. The Veltaran life bond is not entered into lightly. It requires a ritual exchange of genetic markers that creates a permanent biological connection between two individuals. Once established, the bond cannot be broken except by death. Marcus moved closer, his medical scanner beeping softly. Captain, her vital signs are deteriorating. Whatever you're going to decide, it needs to happen soon. The ritual itself is simple, Zarthia continued, her voice growing weaker, a blood exchange while speaking the binding words. But Sarah Chen, you must understand the full implications. The bond will change you. Your lifespan will extend to match mine, approximately 400 of your years. Your immune system will adapt to resist diseases that affect both our species. And when the time comes for reproduction, she paused, her breathing becoming more labored. Veltaran reproduction requires specific biological compatibility. The bond ensures this compatibility, but it also means that any offspring will carry enhanced traits from both parent species. Your child would be stronger, faster, and more intelligent than baseline humans, but they would also be considered an outsider by both our peoples. Sarah felt her mouth go dry. How long do I have to decide about the reproduction aspect? Veltaran females only enter reproductive cycles once every 23 years, Zarthia explained. My last cycle was 19 years ago. You would have approximately 4 years to prepare, assuming we both survive the immediate crisis. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. She was being asked to save 2 million lives by agreeing to create one new life that would belong fully to neither human nor alien society. It was the kind of devil's bargain that would have seemed absurd in any other context, but the universe had a way of making the absurd terrifyingly real. What happens if I agree to the bond but refuse the reproductive obligation when the time comes? Sarah asked. Zarthia's expression grew grave. The bond would be considered broken by betrayal. Among my people, this is a crime punishable by exile or death. But more than that, the physiological changes the bond creates would begin to reverse catastrophically. You would not survive the process. Marcus set down his scanner with more force than necessary. So you're asking the captain to either watch 2 million people die or sign up for a lifetime of biological slavery? I ask for nothing more than I offer, Zarthia replied, her voice carrying a dignity that transcended her weakened state.
If Sarah Chen accepts the bond, she becomes my equal in all matters.
Felteran society is not patriarchal like some species. The life-bonded pair shares authority, resources, and decision-making equally. And the child? Her expression softened. The child would be raised by both parents, learning the best of both cultures. Sarah found herself thinking about her sister's children back on Earth, how they lit up when she visited, how they begged her to tell stories about space and distant worlds. The idea of having a child had always been abstract, something for the future when she wasn't risking her life in the void between stars. Now she was being asked to commit to parenthood with an alien warrior she'd known for less than an hour. Tell me about the Kethvar, Sarah said. What are we really up against? Zarthia's eyes hardened. They are a conquest species, driven by the belief that only the strong deserve to survive. They have been expanding their territory for centuries, enslaving or exterminating every species they encounter. The neural disruptor weapon they've developed is their final solution to the Coalition's resistance. And humans aren't affected by this weapon? Your neural structure is unique, Zarthia confirmed. The Kethvar have never encountered a species with your particular brain chemistry. Their weapon would be useless against you, which is why they plan to eliminate human colonies before you can become a threat to their expansion. Marcus laughed bitterly. So they want to kill us because we might be able to fight back? That's just like humans to accidentally become a galactic threat by refusing to die quietly. Sarah made her decision with the kind of cold calculation that had kept her alive through a dozen dangerous missions. If I agree to this bond, can you guarantee that the warning will reach the Coalition in time? Yes, Zarthia said without hesitation. Coalition relay stations monitor all quantum channels continuously. Once we transmit the encryption keys and threat data, they will mobilize their defensive fleets immediately. And you're certain this bond will give us safe passage through Coalition space? Absolutely. The life bond is considered sacred by all Coalition species. Attacking a bonded pair is one of the few crimes that carries an automatic death sentence under Coalition law. Sarah stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the debris field that had once been a sophisticated alien warship. Somewhere beyond the asteroids, an enemy fleet was preparing to commit genocide against her own species. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. Marcus, she said without turning around. Prepare the shuttle for departure. We're taking our guest with us, Captain. Marcus's voice carried a note of concern. Sarah turned back to face Zarthia. I accept your terms. All of them. Relief flooded across the alien's features, followed quickly by something that might have been regret. You understand that once we begin the ritual, there is no reversal? I understand. Sarah knelt beside Zarthia again. But I need you to understand something too. I'm not just doing this to save human lives. If what you're telling me is true, the Kethvar represent a threat to every free species in the galaxy. Someone has to stand up to them. And it looks like humans are uniquely positioned to do it. Zarthia smiled, and for the first time, Sarah saw not just an alien warrior but a person who had been carrying an impossible burden alone. This is why the Coalition finds your species so intriguing, Sarah Chen. Most would calculate the odds and find a reason to refuse. Humans calculate the odds and then do what's right anyway. What do we need for the ritual? Sarah asked. Zarthia gestured weakly toward a wall panel. There should be a ceremonial blade in the command kit. The words I will speak in Veltaran, but their meaning will be clear to you through the translation matrix. Marcus retrieved the blade, which looked more like a piece of jewelry than a weapon. Its surface seemed to shift between silver and blue, and it felt warm to the touch. Before we begin, Zarthia said, you should know that the bond will create an empathic connection between us. We will not read each other's thoughts, but we will sense emotions, especially strong ones. Physical pain experienced by one will be felt by the other, though to a lesser degree. Sarah nodded. Anything else I should know? Only that I am honored by your choice, even as I regret the necessity that forces it upon you. Sarah took the blade and made a small cut on her palm, watching her blood well up red against her skin. Let's save some lives. The ritual blade felt strangely warm in Sarah's hands as she made the shallow cut across her palm. Her blood, bright red against human skin, seemed to take on an almost luminescent quality in the alien ship's bioluminescent lighting. Zarthia extended her own hand, and Sarah was surprised to see that when cut, the Velterran warrior bled a deep purple that shifted to silver at the edges. "Join hands," Zarthia instructed, her voice taking on a formal cadence that the translator rendered with unusual precision. "The words I speak bind us by blood, by choice, and by sacred duty. Once spoken, they cannot be taken back." Sarah pressed her bleeding palm against Zarthia's, feeling an immediate tingling sensation that spread up her arm like electricity. The alien's violet eyes locked onto hers, and Sarah felt as though she was looking into something vast and ancient. Zarthia began to speak in her native language, the words flowing like music and resonating with harmonics that seemed to vibrate in Sarah's bones. The translation came a moment later, but Sarah found she understood the meaning before the words reached her earpiece. "By blood spilled in trust, I bind my life to yours. Your breath becomes my breath, your strength becomes my strength, your future becomes my future. What threatens you threatens me, what honors you honors me. What you create I will protect unto death. This I swear by the light of distant stars and the bonds that hold atoms together." Sarah felt compelled to respond, though no one had told her what words to say. They seemed to come from somewhere deeper than conscious thought. "By blood spilled in acceptance I bind my life to yours. Your burden becomes my burden. Your fight becomes my fight, your people become my people. What you defend, I will defend. What you sacrifice, I will honor. What we create together will bridge the void between worlds. This I swear by the courage that brought my species to the stars and the stubbornness that keeps us there." The moment the words left her lips, Sarah felt something fundamental shift inside her. The tingling sensation spread from their joined hands throughout her entire body, and she could swear she felt her DNA rewriting itself in real time. It wasn't painful, but it was profoundly alien, like discovering she had organs she'd never known existed. More disturbing was the sudden awareness of Zarthia's emotional state. The alien's relief was so intense it brought tears to Sarah's eyes, but underneath it was a deep sadness and what felt like crushing guilt. Sarah realized that despite accepting the arrangement, Zarthia genuinely regretted having to ask for such a commitment from a stranger. "It is done," Zarthia said, her voice barely above a whisper. She released Sarah's hand, and both women stared at their palms. The cuts had healed completely, leaving only faint scars that seemed to pulse with their own light. Marcus, who had been watching the entire proceeding with the expression of someone witnessing something beyond his understanding, cleared his throat. "Captain, we need to move. Even with alien healing mojo, our guest needs proper medical attention." Sarah helped Zarthia to her feet, surprised by how natural the movement felt. It was as though they had been working together for years instead of minutes. "Can you walk?" "Yes, though I will need support. The bond has stabilized my condition, but my injuries still require treatment." Zarthia looked around the ruined command center with obvious sadness. "I should retrieve the critical data before we abandon the ship." She moved to a console that had remained partially functional and began manipulating controls with fluid precision. The alien symbols meant nothing to Sarah, but she found herself understanding the general purpose of Zarthia's actions through their new connection. It was deeply unsettling to have another person's knowledge bleeding into her consciousness. "The intelligence data is encrypted on a quantum matrix," Zarthia explained as she worked. "It details not just the Kethvar attack plans, but their entire military structure, weapon capabilities, and territorial expansion strategy. This information could give the Coalition a significant tactical advantage." A small crystalline device materialized from the console, no larger than Sarah's thumb but pulsing with complex patterns of light. Zarthia closed her fingers around it protectively. "How do we know the Coalition will actually act on this information?" Sarah asked as they made their way toward the airlock. "Bureaucracies have a way of moving slowly, even in emergencies." "The Coalition High Command is not human bureaucracy," Zarthia replied. "When they receive confirmed intelligence of an imminent threat to member worlds, they respond within hours. The problem has always been getting reliable intelligence past Kethvar jamming systems and through their territorial blockades." They reached the airlock connecting the alien ship to their mining shuttle. Marcus had already pressurized the connection and was running final systems checks. Sarah was about to step through when Zarthia caught her arm. "Before we continue," the alien said, You should understand what we are walking into. The nearest coalition relay station is in orbit around Kepler 442b, deep within the contested zone. The Kethvar maintain patrol fleets throughout that region. Even with our life bond protecting us from coalition defenses, we will still have to evade or fight through enemy forces. Sarah looked at their mining shuttle through the airlock. It was a sturdy vessel designed for navigating asteroid fields and surviving equipment failures in deep space, but it had never been intended for combat. Its only weapons were mining lasers that could cut through rock, and its armor was designed to deflect debris, not military-grade plasma weapons. "What's the alternative?" she asked. "There is none. The next nearest relay station is 18 days away at maximum burn. The Kethvar attack begins in 3 days. Marcus overheard the conversation from the shuttle's cockpit. "Captain, I've been thinking about our options. The mining lasers might not be military weapons, but they can punch through pretty much anything if we get close enough. And this old girl is tougher than she looks. We've survived 3 asteroid storms and a solar flare that would have cooked most ships." Sarah felt a moment of fierce pride in her crew and her vessel. It was entirely human to take a mining ship into a war zone because it was the right thing to do. "Any other ships in the area we could contact for support?" "Negative," Marcus replied. "The nearest human military presence is at the Mars orbital station 6 days away. We're on our own." Zarthia managed what might have been a smile. "On our own with one significant advantage the Kethvar do not expect. They have never faced humans in combat. Their tactical databases contain no information about human combat patterns, weapon preferences, or psychological profiles. We will be a complete unknown to them. Is that good or bad?" Sarah asked. For a species that bases their entire strategy on overwhelming force applied according to predictable patterns, facing an unknown quantity is deeply unsettling. Humans appear to favor adaptability over overwhelming force, which suggests you will be better at improvisation than they are. They transferred to the mining shuttle, sealing the airlock behind them. Sarah took one last look at the alien ship's elegant curves through the viewport. Knowing she was leaving behind technology that could advance human civilization by centuries, but right now saving lives took precedence over scientific advancement. "Marcus, lay in a course for the Kepler system maximum burn," she ordered, "and see if you can squeeze any more power out of the engines. We're going to need every advantage we can get." As the shuttle's engines fired and they began accelerating away from the debris field, Sarah felt Zarthia's presence in her mind like a calm, steady flame. The alien was afraid, but it was the controlled fear of a professional warrior, not the panic of someone overwhelmed by circumstances. "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked quietly. "That I have bound my life to either the bravest or most foolish human in the galaxy," Zarthia replied. "I have not yet decided which. Why not both?" For the first time since they'd met, Zarthia laughed, and the sound was like silver bells in a windstorm. "Yes, I think both is most accurate. 3 days to save 2 million lives in a mining ship crewed by 3 people, carrying intelligence that could change the balance of power in the galaxy." Sarah had faced worse odds before, though she couldn't immediately remember when. 12 hours into their desperate run toward the Kepler system, Sarah was discovering that having an empathic bond with an alien warrior came with unexpected complications. Every time Marcus adjusted their course or increased engine output, she could feel Zarthia's subtle anxiety bleeding through their connection. It wasn't fear exactly, but a deep professional concern about their tactical situation that made Sarah's skin crawl with unease. "Talk to me about what's bothering you," Sarah said, settling into the co-pilot seat beside where Zarthia was monitoring the navigation display. The alien had adapted to human technology with unsettling speed, her fingers dancing over controls as though she'd been born to use them. "Your ship is magnificent for its intended purpose," Zarthia replied carefully. "But we are traveling toward a region of space where Kethvar patrol squadrons operate with complete impunity. They will detect us long before we reach the relay station." Marcus looked up from the engine monitoring station. "How long before we enter contested space?" "At current velocity, approximately 14 hours, Zarthia said. "The Kethvar maintain sensor networks throughout the outer perimeter of Coalition territory. They will know we are coming." Sarah studied the tactical display that Zarthia had configured using her advanced knowledge of the region. Red markers indicated confirmed Kethvar patrol routes, while amber zones showed areas of probable enemy activity. Their projected course cut straight through the heart of it all. "What about stealth options?" Sarah asked. "Can we mask our signature somehow?" Kethavar sensors are designed to detect coalition stealth technology, Zarthia explained. However, they have never encountered human technology before. Your ship's energy signature is unlike anything in their databases, which might actually work in our favor. Marcus pulled up their ship's specifications on his screen. What if we modified our engine output to mimic something they would ignore? A cargo hauler or mining vessel operating under commercial license. That could work, Zarthia said, her excitement bleeding through their bond strongly enough to make Sarah's pulse quicken. Kethavar forces generally ignore civilian traffic unless it appears to be carrying military cargo. If we can disguise our energy signature and maintain course consistency with a commercial flight plan, we might slip right past them, Sarah finished. What do we need to do? The next 2 hours were spent reconfiguring their ship systems according to Zarthia's knowledge of Coalition commercial standards. It was delicate work that required them to reduce their engine efficiency by 30% and install improvised signal dampeners using components from their mining equipment. This feels wrong, Marcus muttered as he rerouted power conduits. We're making ourselves slower and more vulnerable. Sometimes the best armor is not looking like a threat, Zarthia observed. Kethavar psychology favors direct confrontation. They struggle to adapt when enemies refuse to engage according to their expectations. Sarah was beginning to understand why humans were considered such a tactical wild card. Most species seem to approach warfare with established doctrines and predictable strategies. Humans, on the other hand, had a long history of winning through sheer bloody-minded refusal to play by anyone else's rules. What happens when we reach the relay station? Sarah asked. Are we just going to broadcast your data and hope for the best? The process is more complex than that, Zarthia explained. Coalition military communications require biometric authentication from authorized personnel. I will need to interface directly with the relay station's quantum matrix to upload both the intelligence data and my personal command codes. How long will that take? Approximately 12 minutes for full upload and verification. Marcus whistled softly. 12 minutes sitting still in space while enemy patrols are looking for us. That's going to be interesting. Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her chest that she'd learned to associate with situations where survival depended on split-second timing and perfect execution. Through their bond, she sensed that Zarthia was experiencing something similar, though the alien's version felt more controlled, more accepting of the risks involved. Tell me about the relay station itself, Sarah said. What are we going to find when we get there? Zarthia brought up a schematic on the display. The Kepler 442 relay station is a fully automated facility, approximately 2 kilometers in diameter. It maintains a geosynchronous orbit around the 4th planet in the system. Coalition defensive satellites protect it, but those systems will recognize our life bond and allow us to approach. And if the Kethavar have already destroyed it, then we proceed to the backup relay station in the Wolf 359 system, and pray that we arrive before their attack begins. The ship's proximity alarm suddenly activated, causing all 3 of them to freeze. Marcus was at the sensor station in seconds, his face grim as he analyzed the readings. Contact, he announced. Single vessel, approaching on an intercept course. Configuration unknown, but it's definitely not human. Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. Kethavar? Zarthia studied the sensor data, her expression growing increasingly troubled. The energy signature matches Kethavar patrol craft, but something is wrong. They are approaching too slowly, almost cautiously. Maybe our disguise is working? Marcus suggested hopefully. No, Zarthia said with certainty. Kethavar patrol doctrine calls for immediate aggressive approach and demand for identification. This behavior suggests they are uncertain about what we are. Sarah made a command decision. Marcus, continue on course and maintain our commercial profile. Don't change anything unless I give the order. The alien vessel continued its approach, close enough now for their sensors to resolve details. It was a sleek, predatory-looking ship roughly twice the size of their mining shuttle, with weapon ports that glowed with ominous energy. Sarah could feel Zarthia's tension ratcheting higher with each passing moment. Incoming transmission, Marcus announced. Audio only in what sounds like the Kethavar language. Zarthia listened to the alien words, her face growing pale. They are demanding that we identify ourselves and state our business in this region. Standard patrol protocol. Can you respond? Sarah asked. If I respond in Kethavar, they will immediately recognize me as Veltaran. That would result in immediate attack, Sarah thought quickly. What if I respond in human languages? They've never encountered humans before. Maybe confusion will buy us time. It is worth attempting, Zarthia agreed. Sarah activated the communication system and began speaking in English, then switched to Mandarin, then Spanish, cycling through every language she knew while maintaining a calm, professional tone. She described their vessel as a mining survey ship, conducting asteroid analysis under commercial contract, providing fictional registration numbers and citing mining rights that didn't exist. The Kethvar vessel held its position for long minutes while Sarah's transmission played out. She could imagine the confusion aboard the alien ship as they tried to make sense of unknown languages and references to mining operations in territory they controlled. Finally, Zarthia broke the silence. They are responding. They are asking for clarification of our species designation and requesting that we repeat our identification in standard galactic languages. Keep stalling, Sarah ordered. Marcus, what's our distance to the relay station? 8 hours at current speed. Sarah keyed the communication system again, this time adopting the patient tone of someone dealing with a bureaucratic misunderstanding. She began explaining in elaborate detail about human mining operations, asteroid survey techniques, and commercial regulations, making everything sound as boring and official as possible. The strategy worked better than she had hoped. The Kethvar vessel maintained its distance but made no aggressive moves. Through their bond, Sarah could sense Zarthia's amazement at the effectiveness of weaponized bureaucracy. They are requesting that we adjust course to a Kethvar inspection station for proper documentation review. Zarthia translated. How far is that from our destination? Approximately 6 hours in the wrong direction. Sarah smiled grimly. It was time to find out just how much confusion they could generate before the Kethvar figured out what was really happening. Sarah activated the communication system again, adopting the tone of a confused bureaucrat dealing with unexpected regulations. Kethvar Control. This is human mining vessel Chen's Folly. We appreciate your diligence in maintaining space safety protocols, but our current survey contract requires completion within a specific time frame to maintain orbital mechanics calculations for asteroid trajectory mapping. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. Our corporate headquarters will need to file amended flight plans with the appropriate regulatory bodies if we deviate from our current course. This could take several standard days to process through proper channels. Would you prefer we maintain current heading pending regulatory approval? Or should we begin the documentation process for course alteration? Through their empathic bond, Sarah felt Zarthia's mixture of admiration and disbelief. The alien warrior was discovering that humans could weaponize paperwork with devastating effectiveness. The Kethvar response took longer this time. When it came, Zarthia's translation carried a note of frustration. They are consulting with their command structure. They want to know what authority governs human mining operations in this region. Marcus grinned from his position at the engine controls. Captain, I love the way your mind works. They're trying to figure out how to process something that doesn't exist in their databases. Sarah continued her performance, explaining in excruciating detail about fictional human bureaucratic requirements, corporate liability issues, and insurance protocols that needed to be maintained for mining operations in uncharted space. She name-dropped non-existent regulatory agencies and cited imaginary safety requirements, all delivered with the mind-numbing precision of someone who dealt with paperwork for a living. Kethvar Control, she continued. I should also mention that our vessel is equipped with industrial mining equipment that contains radioactive isotopes for geological analysis. Standard human safety protocols require us to maintain minimum safe distances from other vessels during active survey operations. Our insurance carrier has very specific requirements about contamination liability. The Kethvar patrol ship had begun to drift further away, clearly uncomfortable with the mention of radioactive materials. Sarah suppressed a smile as she realized that even aggressive alien warriors apparently had a healthy respect for radiation hazards. They are requesting detailed manifests of all radioactive materials aboard our vessel, Zarthia translated, her voice carefully neutral despite the amusement bleeding through their bond. Sarah launched into an incredibly detailed and completely fictional inventory of mining equipment, geological survey tools, and safety containment systems. She described radiation shielding requirements, contamination protocols, and waste disposal procedures with the kind of mind-numbing thoroughness that could put a caffeinated accountant to sleep. By the time she finished her 20-minute explanation of fictional safety regulations, the Kethvar vessel had increased its distance to what was probably considered a safe range for radiation exposure. More importantly, they were now 6 hours closer to the relay station. "This is unprecedented," Zarthia said quietly during a pause in communications. "I have studied Kethvar tactical doctrine extensively. They are trained to respond to threats with immediate overwhelming force, not to engage in prolonged bureaucratic discussions." Marcus checked their position. 2 hours to the relay station. "Think we can keep this up?" Before Sarah could respond, their sensors detected 2 additional contacts approaching from different vectors. The new ships were larger than the patrol vessel and moving with obvious military precision. Kethvar heavy cruisers, Zarthia identified grimly. The patrol commander must have requested backup. Sarah felt her pulse spike, but she maintained her bureaucratic persona as she responded to the new hails. "Kethvar Control, Chen's Folly here. We're detecting additional vessels in our vicinity. For human safety protocols, we need to verify that all approaching craft have proper certification for operations near radioactive mining equipment." The response came back in what sounded like irritated Kethvar. "They want to know why human mining operations require such extensive safety measures," Zarthia translated. "Because humans are remarkably good at accidentally poisoning themselves," Sarah replied truthfully, though she directed the comment to her crew rather than the communication system. Into the transmitter, she said, "Kethvar Control, human physiology is particularly sensitive to certain types of radiation exposure. Our species has a long history of industrial accidents involving radioactive materials, which led to very comprehensive safety regulations." This was actually true, which gave Sarah's explanation an authenticity that seemed to resonate with the Kethvar commanders. She continued with genuine examples of human nuclear accidents and the regulatory responses they had generated, painting a picture of a species so prone to radioactive mishaps that elaborate safety protocols were essential for survival. The heavy cruisers maintained their distance, apparently convinced that humans were too incompetent to represent a serious threat, but too potentially toxic to approach carelessly. Sarah began to understand why Zarthia had said humans would be a tactical wildcard. Most species probably tried to appear competent and threatening when confronted by superior forces. Humans apparently could survive by appearing dangerously incompetent instead. 1 hour to relay station, Marcus announced quietly. "But Captain, we have a problem. Those cruisers are positioning themselves between us and our destination." Sarah studied the tactical display, noting how the Kethvar vessels had arranged themselves in a loose blockade formation. They weren't actively threatening, but they were clearly prepared to intercept if the mining ship deviated from approved commercial routes. "They suspect something," Zarthia said. "This deployment pattern suggests they are waiting for orders from higher command authority." "How long before they receive those orders?" Sarah asked, unknown. "But when they do, our deception will no longer matter. They will board us or destroy us regardless of radioactive contamination concerns." Sarah made a command decision that would have terrified her if she'd had time to think about it properly. "Marcus, when I give the signal, I want you to cut power to everything except life support and emergency systems. Make it look like we've had a catastrophic system failure. Captain, if we lose power this close to those cruisers, we'll be sitting ducks." "Not sitting ducks," Sarah corrected. "A radioactive hazard drifting helplessly toward their patrol zone. Something they'll want to avoid rather than investigate." She activated the communication system one more time. "Kethvar Control, this is Chen's Folly. We are experiencing cascading system failures in our primary reactor containment. Attempting emergency shutdown procedures now. Please maintain safe distance as we may be venting contaminated coolant." Marcus killed the main power, and their ship went dark except for minimal emergency lighting. On the sensors, they would appear to be a dead hulk drifting through space, potentially leaking radiation and definitely not under any kind of control. The reaction was immediate. All 3 Kethvar vessels began moving away from their position, maintaining sensor locks but clearly unwilling to approach what appeared to be a radiation hazard waiting to happen. "Brilliant," Zarthia breathed. "They are treating us as a navigation hazard rather than a potential threat. How long can we maintain this charade?" Marcus asked. "Long enough," Sarah replied, watching their passive trajectory carry them toward the relay station. Sometimes the best disguise is looking like something nobody wants to deal with. Through the viewport, she could see the lights of the Coalition relay station growing brighter against the starfield. 23 minutes to transmission range, and their HFY escorts were maintaining what they probably considered a safe distance from a potentially radioactive disaster. It was, Sarah reflected, the most human solution possible to an impossible tactical situation. When you couldn't fight and couldn't run, you convinced the enemy that getting too close to you was more trouble than it was worth. Incoming transmission from the relay station, Marcus announced. Coalition frequency, requesting identification and approach clearance. Sarah felt Zarthia's relief wash through their bond like a cool breeze. They had made it. Now came the hard part. The Coalition relay station loomed ahead of them like a metallic flower blooming in the void. Its crystalline communication arrays catching starlight and transforming it into cascading patterns of blue and gold. Sarah had seen plenty of human space stations, but nothing had prepared her for the elegant complexity of Coalition engineering. Coalition Relay Station Kepler 7, this is the human vessel Chensfolly, Sarah transmitted. We are carrying priority intelligence from Veltaran Command regarding imminent HFY military action against Coalition member worlds. The response came back in perfect English, though the voice carried harmonic undertones that suggested non-human origins. Human vessel Chensfolly, please transmit authentication codes for priority intelligence protocols. Zarthia moved to the communication console, her fingers dancing over controls with practiced precision. I am Zarthia of the Veltaran. Command authorization Theta 779. I carry critical intelligence regarding HFY neural disruptor deployment and planned attacks on Proxima system colonies. There was a pause that stretched long enough to make Sarah's nerves crawl with tension. Through their bond, she could feel Zarthia's controlled anxiety as they waited for confirmation that the automated systems would recognize her authority. Authentication confirmed. The station's AI finally responded. Zarthia of the Veltaran, you are cleared for priority data upload. Please proceed to Docking Bay 7 for secure connection. Marcus started to adjust their approach vector, but Sarah caught his arm. Wait, how long for the upload? 12 minutes minimum, Zarthia confirmed. The intelligence data is extensive and requires multiple verification protocols. Sarah looked at the tactical display, where the 3 HFY vessels were maintaining their distance, but clearly monitoring the situation. They're going to figure out what we're doing the moment we dock with that station. Agreed, Zarthia said. HFY patrol doctrine includes standing orders to prevent any Coalition intelligence gathering. Once they realize we are uploading military data rather than filing mining reports, they will attack regardless of contamination concerns. Marcus pulled up the station's defensive capabilities on his screen. The relay station has automated defense systems, but they're designed to protect against pirates and raiders, not military cruisers. Sarah studied the tactical situation, her mind racing through possibilities. 3 enemy ships, superior firepower, and they needed 12 uninterrupted minutes to complete their mission. It was the kind of problem that required thinking outside conventional parameters. What if we don't dock? She asked suddenly. Both Marcus and Zarthia looked at her with confusion. The secure upload requires a physical connection to the station's quantum matrix, Zarthia explained. But the station's communication arrays are external, right? What if we could establish a connection without actually docking? Zarthia's eyes widened as she understood what Sarah was suggesting. It would require modifying our communication systems to interface directly with Coalition quantum protocols. The process would be extremely dangerous and might not work at all, but it would let us maintain mobility while uploading the data, Sarah pointed out. And if the HFY attack, we could break off and run. Marcus was already pulling up schematics of their ship's communication array. I could jury-rig a quantum interface using components from our mining sensors. It won't be pretty and there's a good chance it will fry our entire communication system, but it might work. Do it, Sarah ordered. How long do you need? Give me 20 minutes. Sarah activated the communication system, switching back to her bureaucratic persona. Coalition Relay Station. This is Chensfolly. We're experiencing some technical difficulties with our docking systems due to the radiation containment failure we mentioned earlier. We may need to maintain distance while we resolve these issues. The station's AI responded with mechanical patience. Acknowledged, Chensfolly. Please advise when you are ready to proceed with docking procedures. Meanwhile, Marcus was performing what could only be described as technical magic with their ship systems. He rerouted power conduits, reconfigured sensor arrays, and somehow convinced a mining laser to function as a quantum communication interface. Sarah watched him work with the kind of focused intensity that had kept them alive through a dozen impossible situations. "Captain," Zarthia said quietly, "there is something you should know about the data we're uploading. It contains more than just intelligence about the Kethvar attack." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What else?" "Complete tactical analyses of human combat capabilities based on coalition observations over the past 50 years. Your species has been under surveillance since you first achieved faster-than-light travel. And now we're handing that information over to the coalition?" "You are handing over information that could save billions of lives," Zarthia corrected. "The coalition has no hostile intentions toward humanity. In fact, there has been considerable debate about extending membership to your species." Marcus looked up from his work, sweat beading on his forehead. "Membership in what, exactly?" "The Coalition of Free Worlds," Zarthia explained. "A mutual defense alliance comprising 47 species across 12 sectors of the galaxy. Membership would provide humanity with advanced technology, trade opportunities, and protection from species like the Kethvar." Sarah felt her worldview shifting, like tectonic plates. Humanity wasn't alone in the galaxy, and apparently they'd been under consideration for joining some kind of galactic community. The implications were staggering. "What are the requirements for membership?" she asked. "Demonstration of species maturity, technological capability, and willingness to cooperate in mutual defense," Zarthia replied. "Humans have already demonstrated the first two. Today's mission will likely satisfy the third requirement." An alarm chimed on Marcus's jury-rigged console. "Quantum interface is online," he announced. "It's ugly, unstable, and probably violates several laws of physics, but it should work." Sarah activated the communication system. "Coalition relay station, we've resolved our technical issues. Beginning priority data upload now. Acknowledged. Upload authorized for Zarthia of the Velterran." Zarthia inserted the crystalline data device into Marcus's improvised interface. Immediately, the ship's systems began humming with energy as massive amounts of information flowed through quantum channels toward the relay station. "Upload progress 5%, Zarthia reported. "Estimated completion in 11 minutes. Sarah watched the tactical display with growing tension. The Kethvar vessels were beginning to move slowly but with obvious intent. They had apparently decided that whatever was happening at the relay station required investigation. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, Marcus announced. "The heavy cruisers are moving to intercept." Sarah made rapid calculations in her head. The enemy ships would reach weapons range in approximately 8 minutes. They needed 11 minutes to complete the upload. It was going to be very close. "Zarthia," she said, "how important is it that the upload completes successfully? If we can transmit even 70% of the data, Coalition forces will have enough intelligence to mount an effective defense of the Proxima colonies." Sarah nodded grimly. "Then we hold position as long as possible and pray that human engineering is more stubborn than Kethvar weapons." Through their empathic bond, she felt Zarthia's mixture of fear and determination. The alien warrior was prepared to die to complete the mission, but she was also genuinely concerned about Sarah's safety. It was oddly comforting to know that their artificial bond had developed into something approaching genuine friendship. "Upload progress 25%, Zarthia reported. "The Kethvar vessels will be in weapons range in 6 minutes. Sarah watched the approaching enemy ships and made peace with the possibility that none of them would survive the next few minutes. But if they could save 2 million human lives and potentially bring humanity into the galactic community, it would be worth it. "Marcus," she said quietly, "prepare for evasive maneuvers. This is about to get interesting." The first plasma bolts streaked past their hull like angry orange stars, close enough to make their radiation detectors scream warnings. Marcus threw their mining ship into a corkscrew pattern that would have been impossible for a larger vessel, using their small size and maneuverability to stay ahead of targeting solutions designed for conventional warships. "Upload progress 47%, Zarthia called out, her voice steady despite the ship bucking and rolling around them. 7 minutes remaining. Sarah gritted her teeth as another salvo of weapons fire lit up space around them. The Kethvar heavy cruisers were closing fast, their superior speed beginning to negate the mining ship's maneuverability advantage. Through the viewport, she could see the elegant lines of the Coalition relay station, its defensive systems finally coming online but clearly outmatched by military-grade warships. "They're jamming our quantum link," Marcus reported, sweat streaming down his face as he fought to keep them alive. "The upload is slowing." "Compensating," Zarthia said, her hands flying over controls with inhuman precision. "Rerouting through secondary channels. This will extend upload time to 12 minutes. A massive explosion lit up space ahead of them as one of the relay station's defensive satellites disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma. The Kethvar weren't just trying to stop the upload. They were systematically destroying the Coalition's intelligence-gathering capability in this sector. "Captain," Marcus called out, "I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it." "I already don't like getting shot at by alien warships," Sarah replied, thrown against her restraints as another near miss shook the ship. "What's your plan?" "Our mining lasers are designed to cut through asteroid material at close range. If we can get close enough to one of those cruisers, we might be able to damage their weapon systems." Sarah stared at him. "You want to ram a mining ship into a military cruiser?" "Not ram," Marcus clarified. "More like a very aggressive mining operation on their hull plating." Through their empathic bond, Sarah felt Zarthia's shock at the audacious plan, followed immediately by something that could only be described as fierce admiration. "It is completely insane," the alien warrior said, "which means they will never expect it." "Upload progress 61%, Zarthia reported. 8 minutes remaining, assuming we can maintain quantum connection." Sarah made the kind of decision that had earned humans their reputation as the galaxy's most unpredictable species. "Marcus, bring us around for an attack run on the lead cruiser. Target their main weapon batteries." The mining ship spun on its axis and accelerated directly toward the largest Kethvar vessel, a maneuver so suicidal that the enemy gunners seemed momentarily confused about how to respond. Sarah could almost imagine the alien crew trying to process the sight of a tiny mining vessel charging their heavily armed warship like David going after Goliath with a slingshot. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, Marcus announced. "I hope this works because we're only going to get one shot at this." The Kethvar cruiser finally responded to their charge, bringing its main plasma cannons to bear. But the massive weapons were designed for engaging other warships at long range, not swatting mining vessels that had closed to knife-fighting distance. The plasma bolts passed harmlessly overhead as Marcus dove beneath the cruiser's firing arc. "Now!" Sarah shouted. Marcus triggered their mining lasers at point-blank range, the industrial cutting beams designed to slice through solid rock-finding Kethvar armor plating, surprisingly similar to the asteroids they were used to processing. Sparks and molten metal erupted from the cruiser's hull as the mining beams carved through weapon mountings and sensor arrays. The attack lasted only seconds before Marcus was forced to break off, but the damage was spectacular. The Kethvar cruiser's main weapons were offline, and secondary explosions were rippling along its starboard side as damaged systems cascaded into total failure. "Upload progress 78%, Zarthia reported, her voice carrying a note of fierce satisfaction. "The quantum link is holding." But their victory was short-lived. The second Kethvar cruiser had adjusted its tactics, positioning itself to block their approach to the relay station, while the damaged vessel limped away to effect repairs. Worse, the patrol ship they'd initially encountered was now joining the engagement, its smaller weapons perfect for targeting a mining vessel at close range. "Multiple contacts. Bearing 117 Mark 6, Marcus announced. "Coalition vessels moving fast." Sarah's heart leaped as she saw the new signatures on their tactical display. 3 sleek warships bearing Coalition markings were approaching at maximum acceleration, their weapon systems already charging for combat. "This is Coalition Cruiser Harmony's Edge," a new voice announced over their communication system. "Human vessel Chen's Folly, please maintain your current position while we engage hostile forces." The arrival of Coalition reinforcements changed the entire dynamic of the battle. The Kethvar vessels found themselves outgunned and outnumbered, their attention divided between the mining ship they'd been trying to destroy and the military vessels now engaging them in proper ship-to-ship combat. "Upload progress 94%, Zarthia reported. 2 minutes to completion." Sarah watched in amazement as the Coalition warships demonstrated why they had maintained their independence against Kethvar expansion for decades. Their weapons were precise and devastatingly effective, their tactical coordination flawless. Within minutes, one Kethvar cruiser was retreating at maximum acceleration, while the other was drifting powerless. Its systems completely disabled. Upload complete, Zarthia announced with profound relief. All intelligence data has been successfully transmitted to Coalition High Command. The communication system crackled to life with a new voice, this one carrying the authority of high military rank. This is Admiral Korthak of the Coalition Defense Fleet. The intelligence you have provided has been verified and is being transmitted to all sector commands immediately. Defensive preparations for the Proxima colonies will begin within the hour. Sarah felt her knees go weak with relief. They had done it. 2 million human lives were no longer in immediate danger, and the Coalition now possessed the intelligence necessary to counter Kethvar expansion plans. "Admiral," she said, "we have a Velterran warrior aboard who requires immediate medical attention. She was injured while retrieving this intelligence. Medical teams are being dispatched to your location," the Admiral replied. "Captain Chen, I am instructed to inform you that the Coalition High Council wishes to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Your actions today have demonstrated exactly the kind of courage and resourcefulness that the Coalition values in potential member species." Through their empathic bond, Sarah felt Zarthia's pride and satisfaction, but also something else, a deep contentment that came from completing an impossible mission, and underneath it, the warm glow of genuine affection for the human who had risked everything to help her. "There is something else," Zarthia said quietly, meant for Sarah's ears alone. "The life bond we formed was created under emergency circumstances. Coalition law allows for its dissolution if both parties agree, now that the immediate crisis has passed." Sarah considered the offer. The bond had been formed out of necessity, a desperate bargain to save lives. She could return to her old life, her mining operations, her simple existence in the space between the stars. But as she looked at the alien warrior who had become something more than an ally over the past few days, she realized that some bonds transcended their original purpose. "And if I choose not to dissolve it?" Sarah asked. Zarthia's smile was radiant. "Then in approximately 4 years, we will need to have a very interesting conversation about raising a child who will belong to both our peoples and neither." Sarah laughed, the sound carrying all the relief and exhaustion and hope of someone who had just helped save the galaxy. "I think I can handle that conversation." Through the viewport, she could see Coalition medical ships approaching to provide treatment for Zarthia's injuries. Beyond them, the stars stretched out in all directions, no longer cold and empty but filled with the promise of new alliances, new challenges, and new possibilities. Marcus looked up from his console with a grin. "Captain, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that we're heroes who probably just got humanity invited to join a galactic civilization. The bad news is that our quantum communication array is completely fried, and we're going to need a tow back to the nearest starport." "I think that's a fair trade," Sarah replied, settling back into her command chair. "Besides, I have a feeling our mining days are over. The galaxy just got a lot more interesting." As Coalition vessels moved to escort them to safety, Sarah reflected on the strange turns that life could take. 3 days ago, she'd been a simple mining captain worried about asteroid trajectories and equipment maintenance. Now she was life-bonded to an alien warrior. Humanity was on the verge of joining a galactic community, and she was apparently going to become a mother to a child who would bridge 2 worlds. It was, she decided, exactly the kind of impossible situation that humans seem to specialize in, turning into opportunities. And as Zarthia's hand found hers, their bond humming with shared contentment and anticipation for the future, Sarah,